Imagine walking into a scene so horrific that it stops an entire army in its tracks. It's June 1462, in the Danubian plains of Wallachia, and an invading Ottoman force freezes at the sight before them. Through the morning mist, what they first thought were trees reveal themselves to be something far more sinister. They are people, 20,000 men, women, and children, all impaled on wooden stakes. The stench hits like a punch, a sickening mix of rotting flesh, blood, and the unbearable odor of death. It clings to the air, carried by the wind for miles, making your stomach turn and your throat tighten. The stakes are placed with chilling precision, forming a grotesque pattern across the landscape. Some bodies hang crooked, evidence of their desperate struggles. Others slump forward, as if in silent prayer, their suffering finally over. And at the center of this nightmare, towering above the rest, is a golden stake. On it, the Turkish governor of Nicopolis, his skin torn and blackened by flies, his mouth locked in an endless scream. This is no random act of war. This is a deliberate, terrifying message, signed by one man, Vlad Dracula. The Ottomans turned back that day, unwilling to face the monster behind this horror. And here is the chilling truth most history books gloss over. This wasn't even Vlad's worst act. Welcome to a story of cruelty so extreme, it echoes through centuries. Vlad III, ruler of Wallachia, wasn't just a king. He was a master of terror in an era where brutality was the norm. But while other rulers of the medieval world might have been harsh, Vlad took cruelty to a whole new level. He didn't just kill his enemies or punish wrongdoers. He turned death into a spectacle, a performance designed to strike fear into everyone who witnessed it. Today, we're diving into the dark world of Vlad the Impaler, a man whose name became synonymous with horror. His methods were gruesome, his motives calculated, and his legacy is a haunting reminder of how far humans can go in the name of power. So, let's step back into the 15th century, into a land gripped by fear, and uncover the terrifying truth about one of history's most brutal rulers. Vlad ruled Wallachia, a small region in what is now Romania, during a time of constant conflict. Sandwiched between the powerful Ottoman Empire and other European forces, Wallachia was a battleground, and survival meant being tougher than your enemies. Cruelty wasn't just common, it was expected. But Vlad didn't just meet those expectations. He exceeded them in ways that shocked even the most hardened soldiers and chroniclers of his time. Writers from the Holy Roman Empire and the Ottoman court documented his actions, some with horror, others with a grudging respect for his ability to instill fear. They described executions that weren't random acts of violence, but carefully planned displays, meant to terrify enemies and keep his own people in line. A court scribe once wrote that Vlad's public punishments turned bustling marketplaces into scenes straight out of a slaughterhouse, with the screams of the dying blending with the everyday chatter of merchants selling their wares. In Vlad's Wallachia, even small crimes could lead to a death sentence. Stealing, lying, or cheating on a spouse. None of these were minor offenses in his eyes. Sometimes the punishment seemed to match the crime, but more often, it depended on Vlad's mood. And his favorite method of execution was as simple as it was horrifying: impalement. This wasn't just a way to kill someone, it was a way to make them suffer for as long as possible. The wooden stake used for impalement wasn't sharpened to a fine point that would kill quickly. Instead, it was smoothed and sometimes coated with animal fat to make the process even slower and more painful. The stake would be driven into the victim's body, often through the lower body, though sometimes through the mouth or chest. Death could take hours or even days, with the victim left to writhe in agony under the scorching sun or biting coal. Witnesses described men hanging on stakes for up to 2 days, their skin blistering, flies buzzing around open wounds, before they finally stopped moving. The sounds of impalement were as haunting as the sight. Imagine the wet, tearing noise as the stake was forced through flesh, followed by muffled groans that turned into raw, desperate screams. Those screams would eventually fade into broken sobs, until even those stopped. For Vlad, impalement wasn't just about the act itself, it was about the visibility. Victims were hoisted high above the ground, displayed for all to see. From the city gates, from the surrounding fields, even from neighboring villages, people could witness the slow, public deaths. In today's terms, it was like live streaming every execution, but with the added horror of the smell, the heat, and the heavy dread that hung in the air. Everyone knew what awaited them if they crossed Vlad. While impalement became Vlad's signature method, he wasn't the only ruler of his time to make executions a public spectacle. Across medieval Europe, other kings and leaders turned death into a form of entertainment or warning. Peter the Cruel of Castile, for example, ordered traitors to be boiled alive in massive cauldrons, the smell of cooking flesh reportedly drifting into his royal chambers as he dined with the windows open. Ivan the Terrible of Russia had his victims roasted over slow fires, their bodies turned like meat on a spit, or in winter, he'd have them stripped, doused with water, and left to freeze into solid statues before shattering them into pieces. These rulers, like Vlad, understood the power of fear, and they wielded it without mercy. Vlad's own arsenal of cruelty was just as varied and horrifying. Beyond impalement, he used the breaking wheel, a brutal device where victims were tied to a large wagon wheel, their limbs smashed with iron bars, and then their broken bodies were woven through the spokes to die slowly under the sun. Sometimes, he blinded his enemies before killing them, forcing them to stumble blindly through his court as a twisted form of amusement for his guests. In one particularly chilling story, Vlad hosted a banquet surrounded by the impaled bodies of his enemies. He ate calmly, wiping his hands as flies swarmed around him, completely unfazed by the horror. The message was always the same. Death wasn't just a punishment under Vlad's rule. It was a tool, a way to control through terror. Let's return to 1462, when the Ottomans once again marched on Wallachia with a massive army. Vlad knew he couldn't defeat them in a fair fight. His forces were too small, his resources too limited. So, he turned to what he knew best: fear. In what history calls the night attack, Vlad and his men crept into the Ottoman camp under the cover of darkness. At first they struck silently, cutting down soldiers in their sleep. Then, chaos erupted. Screams filled the air. Fires broke out, horses stampeded, and the glint of steel flashed in the night. By dawn, the Ottomans were in full retreat, desperate to escape. But as they fled, they rode straight into that horrifying valley of 20,000 stakes. Picture it. The morning mist slowly clearing to reveal endless rows of bodies, some still alive, groaning faintly as they swayed in the breeze. Crows hopped from corpse to corpse, pecking at eyes and flesh. An entire army, battle-hardened and fearless, was broken not by swords or arrows, but by the sheer terror of what they saw. Vlad the Impaler is a figure who history remembers in two very different ways. In Romania, even today, many see him as a hero, a fierce defender of his land who kept the Ottoman Empire at bay when Wallachia was at its most vulnerable. His brutal tactics, they argue, were necessary in a time of endless war. But in the West, his name became something else entirely, a source of dark legends, twisted into the inspiration for the vampire Dracula. The truth, though, lies somewhere in between, and it's far more unsettling than either version. Vlad wasn't a madman acting on wild impulses. Every stake driven into the ground, every body broken on a wheel, every pot set to boil, it was all part of a cold, calculated strategy. His message was simple: obey me or suffer beyond imagination. And here's the part that's hard to swallow. His methods worked. Crime in Wallachia plummeted under his rule. Nobles, who might have plotted against him, stayed loyal out of sheer fear. Enemies, like the Ottomans, thought twice before crossing his borders. It's easy to look back at Vlad's time and think we've moved past such barbarity. We like to believe we're more civilized now, that we've left those dark chapters behind. But have we really? The stage may have changed, but the human fascination with violence and spectacle hasn't. We still watch executions and brutality, whether in movies, TV shows, or viral videos, all from the safety of our screens. We're still drawn to the shock and horror, just as people in Vlad's time were drawn to watch his public punishments. The difference is, we don't have to smell the rot or hear the screams. If Vlad was just one king among many, imagine the countless other horrors history has buried, the stories of cruelty we've forgotten or chosen to ignore. Vlad the Impaler's legacy is a stark reminder of the extremes of human nature. His reign, though short, left a mark that still haunts us today, not just in ghost stories or vampire tales, but in the uncomfortable questions his life raises. How far will a leader go to maintain power? How much fear is enough to control a population? And are we, as a society, really so different from the crowds who once stood watching as stakes were driven into the ground? These are questions without easy answers, but they're worth asking as we look back on a man who turned death into an art form. So, what do you think about Vlad's story? Was he a necessary evil, a hero of his time, or simply a monster? Let me know in the comments below. If you found this dive into history as chilling as I did, make sure to subscribe for more unsettling truths that the history books often leave out. There are so many stories like this, hidden in the shadows of the past, waiting to be uncovered. Hit that like button if you want to see more, and share this video with someone who needs a reminder of just how dark history can get. Let's keep exploring the past together, no matter how disturbing it might be.